Happy Friday. Hope you're having a great 4th of July weekend. The third live IB Nation Sports Talk show of the day. It's been a busy day today, along with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. How are you today, Vince?
I'm great. Third show of the day, second for me. So not back to back to back for me, which is good, which
Yeah.
is,
Little
I'm
gap
happy
in
about
between,
that. Yes,
right?
little gap. Not upset about the gap. That's for sure. But we'll be back into no gap land next week, but which is cool. I mean, it's summertime. It's not what I do, but
No gap land.
no gap land, which is, hey, it's all good. It's all good.
Absolutely.
How are you doing? What's your day been like?
I'm doing good. This is the good old 3 out of 4 day holiday weekend. Like
True.
little odd. It's kind of like Thanksgiving this year, having the 4th on a
Yeah.
Thursday.
That's a good
It's
point.
almost like we're doing a Black Friday show or something in July.
It's very weird. The days of the week get all muddied together in the summertime for me, and having nothing to do yesterday really messed it up for me.
Yeah,
Like, it felt more like a Sunday, maybe.
I know. Well, I just kept sitting around like feeling like Saturday,
Yeah.
but then you've got to go to work on Sunday or something.
It was
But
just
like,
very strange. And then we're adding a show tomorrow. So is it really going to be like that? The
yeah.
whole thing's all mucked up.
I watched a lot of movies yesterday. Is what I did. I
did as
watched
well.
Independence Day from start, like the entire thing. Non-network. First time I've watched the whole thing, and I don't know how long. So I did that.
Okay.
Then we went out to eat. Came back. We watched 16 Candles last night.
Okay.
All the way through.
Interesting.
We're kind of on this not Breakfast Club, but Brat Pack kind of thing after the Brat Pack documentary. I don't know if you heard about that came out on Hulu a couple weeks ago.
I did not. The Brat Pack is just a little before my time.
Yeah.
And so I never really got into those movies.
Yeah.
Specifically. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I do.
I just,
I know what you're talking about.
Never really did it for me, to be honest with you.
So we did that. And then when 16 Candles was over, Anchorman was on.
Oh, wow. Talk about different feel.
Probably watched about 75% of Anchorman. And then when that was over, wife went to bed and I started watching the 1995 movie called Heat. Have you ever seen Heat?
What's it about? Maybe.
It's a bank robbery movie. It's got De Niro, Pacino, Val Kilmer, John Voight. It's got a ton of people. Ashley Judd was in it.
Big fan.
Yeah.
And she was in her prime in 95.
Yep. The guy that was in Forrest Gump, Forrest's friend, what's his name? It's escaping me. Bubba Gump. Or Bubba.
Like gotcha.
The guy Bubba, his buddy in Vietnam who died. He was in it. Ton of people. Serrano from Major League.
Wow.
Can't think of his real name off the top of it, but he played the president in one of those TV shows a while back. He was in it. So star-studded cast.
No kidding.
And it's actually a very long movie. So I started it last night. I'm going to finish it tonight.
Oh, so, very good.
I had never seen it before, but I've heard a lot of people talking about how good it is. I think it's pretty good, but it hasn't really lived up to some of the hype that I've heard. So
if it hasn't lived up to the hype in the first half, that's not great.
Still good.
That's what keeps you engaged.
Yes.
So I watched 3 movies yesterday.
Really?
Actually.
Okay.
And it was kind of spawned into by my kids, believe it or not, mostly my oldest, because I picked Back to the Future to watch.
I think yesterday was the anniversary, wasn't it?
Yes. And so all 3 are on Netflix. And I turned it on just while I was out on the grill. I took the laptop out. I didn't really want to, abandon the grill. So I got the laptop. I just started playing the movie and I'm, flipping the burgers and doing the dogs and the brats and the whole thing. And then we went back inside and I transferred it basically to the television. And then we sat down and we watched all 3. We watched the trilogy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Third one, from what I remember, not nearly as it kind of. That's where they go wild, wild west and all that stuff.
I like the third one.
Do you?
Yeah, no, I do. I like all 3
Probably
for
seen it
various
once.
reasons. Really?
Yeah.
Oh
I just
man.
didn't think it was that great compared to the other ones. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm a big fan of the whole trilogy, all three. Big fan.
I could be convinced maybe if I go back and watch it again. It's been a long time, but
It does help to watch them in succession. You know what I mean? And I
yeah.
believe 2 and 3, they were made like back to back, like no break in between or anything like that. And so there's a lot of callback from 3 to 2, and then setting the scene from 2 to 3, with the gun fighting and all this stuff, different stuff. So I do like all three, and it helped to watch all three in a row. Like, didn't have to explain anything to anybody, which was good because they were following along. It was good. It was nice use of the time.
Okay. All right. Well, this is the We In, We Out show. So, of course, with We In, We Outs, all the questions have to be submitted via the Champions Lounge at Irish Breakdown, the
Gotta be a
premium
member.
Champions Lounge. That's right. You got to be a member to submit the questions, and we've got a lot of them today, a lot of good ones. So let's just jump right into them and see where we go.
I've only done this, I think, one time, so I'm kind of excited about this.
Okay.
Here we go.
I didn't remember you doing one before, but maybe you did do one of the
maybe I haven't.
First ones. I don't know.
I think we kind of test drove the concept. I don't know that I've ever done it where you've actually brought up the Champions Lounge and done this whole thing, but I feel like we test drove the concept, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right. I don't know.
I don't either. Let's do this.
All right. So first one, Notre Dame will have at least one wide receiver earn at least third team All-American honors from at least 3 of the 5 official All-American lists. Are we in or are we out on that? And before you give your answer, Associated Press, American Football Coaches Association, Football Writers Association of America, The Sporting News, and the Walter Camp Foundation are the 5 official All-American ballots. So one Notre Dame receiver will get at least third team honors from at least 3 of the 5.
I'm out. I'm out.
You're out.
I don't. The problem is Notre Dame is not exactly known for their wide receiver play. And I don't know that there is a guy that's going to be head and shoulders above everybody else to acquire the stats necessary. There's going to be plenty of guys on other teams that are going to rack up stats, and that is what gets you on these All-America lists offensively. And again, Notre Dame's not known for wide receivers, so Notre Dame will get the benefit of the doubt for tight ends, offensive line, things of that nature, but not wide receiver. So I'm going to be out on this.
I'm hesitantly out. I think they've got a chance because you've got guys like, are we counting Jaden Harrison only as a kickoff returner? Like if he gets kickoff, even though he's a wide receiver, if he gets kickoff return All-American honors?
He has to be a wide receiver.
Okay.
Like you have to get it for being a wide receiver.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because he's already gotten it for being a kick return guy. Yeah.
And then Chris Mitchell at least has a reputation that'll follow him from Florida International. But I've got to be out as well because I think it's going to be so spread out. And because it does tend to be, like a lot of these awards tend to be reputation based. You have to have, like, what you did last year tends to generate a lot of carryover going into the next year. So
they definitely don't have that going on.
Right. So I've got to be out on it as well. We in or we out. It's totally fine to put ketchup on your hot dog on a 4th of July barbecue or any barbecue for that matter. Where are you on ketchup? Very controversial take. And I know that we're going to offend some people because, most people are very diehard one way or the other on this whole ketchup thing.
Here's the thing. Are we asking, am I personally in or out, or is it okay for anybody to do it? I need some clarification here. What do we like? Personally, I don't put anything on my hot dogs.
Really?
At all. Yeah. Yep.
Didn't you used to do like an onion thing?
Yeah, maybe some some chopped onion, maybe a little bit, or I have been known to throw a little cheese on there, little sprinkled cheese on the top.
Yeah.
But I don't do ketchup, so I would be out personally. but I wouldn't even bat an eye if I saw somebody else do it.
See,
Okay.
some people feel like DJ putting ketchup on anything is
Yeah. Hard
forbidden,
pass on
but
that.
I like a little mustard, a little ketchup
Okay.
on my hot dog. Like a little sour and sweet, or whatever you would
Okay.
call that, like salty and sweet kind of thing. And I definitely like, ketchup with my French fries and on my burger. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Do you go all in on like the Chicago dog, like with all the fixins?
I've done
Essentially.
that before, but I haven't had a Chicago dog in a long time.
Okay.
I'm like you, actually. Like I actually like a little cheese sauce on
Oh,
my dog.
it's like a
if I was
nacho cheese sauce kind of a
Yeah.
deal. I could get on
Yeah.
board with that. Not a lot, but enough for some flavor.
And if jalapenos are available, I like
Ooh.
the ketchup, mustard, jalapeno
Oh,
on my
wow.
dog. Yeah.
Okay.
I would rather do jalapenos than the Chicago dog style with everything.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like Salty says, Chicago dogs, veritable salad on them.
Yes.
You get tomatoes and the peppers and
It's
all different kinds
way
of stuff.
too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much.
It's a bit overboard,
cannot.
I think.
Yeah, I cannot get on board with that at all.
Okay, so played like a champion. I was about to say today, but played like a champion has a slew of questions. So we're
Okay,
going to have to kind of go through these one by one. Some good ones, though, here. So the first one, Notre Dame's combination of young and inexperienced offensive line will give up 6 pressures or less week 1 against an elite defensive line and stellar defensive mind in Elko. So 6 pressures or less Notre Dame will give up against Texas A&M.
Pressures are so subjective.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Are we going by what Pro Football Focus says? Are we going by what, Brian says when he goes and cuts up the film? You know what I mean? Like,
yes, I do.
It's very subjective as far as what an actual pressure is. And so that's part of the problem for me. And I don't know, I guess, what a good game of team pressures would be. My instinct is to say I'm out. I think they'll probably get a few more than that. I don't like, if you were going to give me like some sack totals or something like that, I would be much more convicted in my answer, because I don't think that they're going to be able to get to Riley Leonard and bring him down to the ground. But I do think they might flush him out of the pocket a couple of times, and they may get into his wheelhouse a few times. But so I'll sell it, because I think they could go over the number of 6, just based on what people believe a pressure actually is.
I'm going to buy it, because I think that Leonard's mobility is going to help quite a bit in this. But because he's got escapability that a pocket quarterback doesn't have. So you're going to avoid some pressures in those circumstances. So, even if maybe guys get through, if he flushes out and he takes off and runs, then there's no pressure.
Though?
No, it's not.
It's not. So when they push him out, like when he leaves the pocket because there's pressure on him, that's not a pressure. Like I don't know. Genuinely asking.
Does Brian score that as a pressure?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what his criteria is.
I thought a pressure was essentially you're forced to throw, and it either results in an incompletion or an interception.
If we're if we're going by your definition, then it's going to be way under 6, like way under 6. If a pressure is just forcing the quarterback to just be off of his mark and move away from the pocket, I think it could be over. Like that's what I don't think that's a pressure.
I don't think, like the year, for example, remember the season when I sat in the booth and helped with the official stats?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of how it was explained to me. That's when you credit a pressure, the 2 things that I just said, basically. Like if a defensive guy, forces the quarterback either into an incompletion or an interception.
Okay.
So because
then it's going to be way under. I'll buy it then, because if that's the definition, I will absolutely buy that, because he's not going to be forced to throw an interception or an incompletion or anything like that based on the D line. I don't think that's happening.
Right.
So
now, if it's like, again, like, you come at him and the quarterback gets out of the pocket and he takes off and runs. I mean, if it results in a positive play, I don't think you can credit a pressure.
That's fair.
Case.
I think he will allow that to happen. You know what I mean? Like I do think his mobility will help them, and then okay, yeah, he'll get away from some of those pressures. So yeah, I like that.
Right. Okay, next one. Joe Alt was an elite pass protector before Joe Rudolph came to coach at Notre Dame. Taking Alt out of the equation, Notre Dame's offensive line pass protection grade as a unit was a C+ or better last season. And he says, please substantiate your grade because I would have given Spindler and Coogan D grades in the center, a C- at best. So what say you on this one, Vince D'Addario?
Wow. Well, Rocco was there before Rudolph. And I mean, every one of these offensive line. So like the premise I don't like because every one of these offensive linemen was here prior to Rudolph. So if you're taking Joe Alt out of the equation, then you see what I'm saying? Like so he comes out of the equation because he wasn't coached by Rudolph before, but all these other guys who weren't also coached by Rudolph before, they are part of the equation. Like I have a hard time with that part of it unless I'm reading it wrong. But
I think he's basically just saying Joe Alt was elite. Maybe he's kind of intertwining some things that maybe, aren't connected. But I think he's saying Joe Alt was elite. So if you take Joe Alt out, how good really was the rest of the offensive line? I think.
So what about Fisher? You didn't even mention Fisher.
Yeah, I know. I'll just say this. They allowed 16 sacks all of last season, which is about 1.2 per game. They ranked 19th in the nation. It's not all because of Joe Alt. It wasn't all because of Joe Alt. So even if you take Joe Alt out and they rank 19th in the nation, which would be at least an A, if not an A+. So if you take Alt out, I think at worst the rest of the unit is a B-. So I've got to be out on this.
I love the stat. Thank you for that, because there's actually some factoid behind my.
Well, when he said,
process.
"Please substantiate your grade," like you asked what my day was like, I scrolled through and looked at some of these. So Smart. I definitely found a stat I could fall back on with this one.
Yeah,
look, I think that there's just concern, obviously, because you're taking out the very best lineman that they had,
sure.
and then, as you said, Blake Fisher was the second best lineman that they had. You take those guys out, right? So I think he's concerned about the offensive line, especially going into that Texas A&M game, which I get because, again, you lost two really good guys, a first-round guy and a second-round guy. But I think they'll be okay. I really do.
How many, since you're the stat guy, and I don't know how fast you can find this, but
there's something else. We're gonna go back to pressures now.
No, how many sacks did Notre Dame give up in the bowl game?
Ooh.
Do you have that information? Like
I don't know. I don't have it right here, but it's something that I can find.
Yeah, why don't you find that for a second? Because I don't believe they gave up very many.
I don't think they did either.
That was the starting lineup that I anticipate being the starting lineup going into Texas A&M. And so we do have some empirical evidence of this five working together. And so, and Steve Angeli is not Riley Leonard when it comes to mobility either. So
they gave up 2 sacks
against
the entire Oregon game. State. Yeah.
Okay. With the starting defensive line that was actually pretty good for Oregon State being intact in the bowl game, correct? So that is something that is important. So I don't think that this is going to be the problem that people anticipate that it's going to be. I'll just put it that way, because you've got new guys, you've got some movement, you've got some really talented guys that maybe haven't proven themselves yet, and that's fine. But I think overall, I am not that worried about this offensive line. Now, I realize the question was more about last year than it is this year, but I feel like they were in the B category for pass protection. I really do. Now, there were some whiffs, and as Ryan said, look, there were Fisher was the worst at pass blocking. Like he was not good at it, and being at right tackle, I think there's going to be an upgrade at pass blocking over on the right side, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, run blocking is a different conversation, but I think they're going to be better as far as pass blocking is concerned. So I think I'm more on board with what the offensive line is going to do next year than a lot of people are.
Yeah, because I'm looking back at the question. He gave Coogan a D, the center a C- at best. And again, you're probably going to be replacing both of those. If things work out the way we think, you're going to have Spindler starting at one guard, Kramer starting at the other guard, and you're going to have Craig, or not Kramer, Shrouth. Sorry,
yeah, Billy.
Yeah, he wrote just the size and everything. He
right.
a little bit of Kramer, but Tommy Kramer, obviously. Yeah, so I mean.
But Ashton Craig is going to start at center, just like you're saying.
Right.
And Ashton Craig literally forced Zeke Correll to go play for a different team.
Exactly.
It is an upgrade at center. And when he was in there in the last 3 games of the season, or 4, whatever it was,
but I mean,
it's an upgrade.
But he's still saying, grade last year. But again, like, they only gave up 16 sacks, and it's not all just because of Joe Alt. So I can't give them a horrible grade so like I said, B- is what I would give them.
Me too.
The rest of the unit, because they were still among the elite when it came to, the low number of sacks. And they didn't give up a ton of pressures either, because like we were just, the first question was about the pressures. 37 opponent pressures last year and 16 sacks. So 37 pressures is not quite 3 per game. So they didn't even give up a whole lot of pressures last year. And that was with a less mobile quarterback than what they're going to have this year. So there you go. Okay, so he says it's reasonable for a fan to believe, as I do, that Texas A&M has at least a 50% chance to beat Notre Dame due to home field advantage, their quarterback being way better than anyone realizes, and the ability of A&M's defensive line to potentially dominate our offensive line week 1. When was the last season Notre Dame's offensive line looked good week 1 against a defensive unit with above average talent? And the positive overall vibes in the program with Elko and the excellent coaches he's hired. Very concerned about Elko, seems like.
And very concerned about the offensive line, which I feel like we just kind of put.
Yeah. I mean, is this possible? Sure, it's possible.
Anything's possible.
But, like if we take them one at a time, home field advantage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
College football 25. So,
okay, cool.
They're gonna have home field advantage. Their quarterback being way better than anyone realizes.
I got a big time pushback on that one.
I think he's gonna be good, but again, like when you look at the quarterback matchup, I would take Riley Leonard 100 times out of 100 over Connor Weekman. He's gonna be good, but I don't think he's gonna be way better than anyone realizes.
Oh, gosh, no. And, again, it's one pass, but good Lord, he looked bad in the finals at the Manning camp. So I'll just say that.
Yeah.
I don't see that being the case. Way better than anyone realizes. People think that Texas A&M is favored against Notre Dame. So I think people think he's going to be really good. And I think it's going to be the opposite of that. I think he's not going to be as good as people think that he's going to be. So,
yeah.
And on top of that, he's going to be going up against one of the best defenses in the country. So that's part of it too. So that part I am not worried about. Now, the last one, the ability of the defensive line, blah, 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 blah. Hard pass on that one. I mean, yeah, the offensive line will be playing together. Not for the first time, by the way, because they played together in the bowl game. So, and they'll have all of spring, and they'll have all of fall camp and everything else. And so they're not going to be overwhelmed by A&M's defensive line.
Yeah.
I do not see that being the case.
There's talent on that defensive line, and I think it's going to be good. But like when you look at the production those guys return, I mean, it's like they're if we're doing scales, I would put it pretty even with Notre Dame's offensive line, actually.
Yeah. People tend to forget that
they had stars coming in, but none of them have actually done anything yet at the college level, with the exception of the Purdue transfer that they got, the defensive end.
Notre Dame's offensive line had some pretty good star rankings coming in too. And I think
Yeah.
people tend to forget that as well. Like these kids were pretty highly recruited coming out of high school. So, I get all of those things. And like DJ says, Elko is the only concern because he knows how to get into Leonard's head. That QB doesn't scare anyone. Getting to his head, like I think you're giving a coach a little bit too much credit to be able to get into somebody's head. Like Riley Leonard is a seasoned starter. He's done this for a long time. I don't think the coach is going to get into his head, so to speak, because last time I checked, Mike Elko's a good defensive coordinator. I think Mike Denbrock's a better offensive coordinator than Mike Elko is a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And that's who Riley Leonard's got on his side. So if the defensive line is overwhelming the offensive line for Notre Dame, Mike Denbrock's going to have an answer to that. Get the ball to the outside.
Yeah. I mean, they'll have some wins. They'll win some plays. It's not going to look perfect, but I think that Notre Dame's offensive line is more than going to be able to hold their own in that game. I don't think they're going to get dominated by any means.
Yeah. I'm good. I don't have any worries about that. And coaches have gone against former players a million different times. And how often how often are they getting in their heads? Like, I think that's a way overplayed aspect of this. Way overplayed.
Yeah. He knows his strengths and weaknesses. He knows Elko knows Riley Leonard's strengths and weaknesses, but he still has to be able to his guys still have to be able to make plays. Right. They have to, look, that's what it's going to come down to.
Mike Elko is going to try to keep Riley Leonard in the pocket, and he's going to try to force him to be a thrower, right? I think we can all anticipate that that's going to be the case. You can try to do a lot of things. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, number one. And if he forces Riley Leonard to be a thrower, I'm actually okay with that too. I believe he just proved he could be an accurate thrower of the football. So again, I don't think people give him enough credit for the accuracy that he throws with either. So maybe Riley Leonard's going to get into Mike Elko's head. Anybody ever think about that?
Hey,
how about that?
All right, Oscar Madison says, "Good questions though. Played like a champion." I know you're a little. Maybe a little bit on the dark side, but still some good questions. A little bit worried.
I mean, very worried, man. Everybody needs to take a breath.
So Oscar Madison says there will be at least 2 true freshmen in the starting lineup or rotation for USC. In or out on that?
In the rotation. Well, the third running back is probably going to be a true freshman. So I guess that would be 1. And that'll be at the beginning of the year. So the odds of there being 1 more, I think, are pretty good. So
whether it's like Micah Gilbert or
Bryant Young,
one of the cornerbacks, defensive. Yeah, like I'll say yeah, I'm in on that.
Yeah, I'm in on it. I think there's a pretty good chance.
Yeah, KVA on defense, Kingston Biliamu.
Yeah, I mean, and he said in the rotation, like Bryce Young could be in the rotation at defensive line. KVA will be in the rotation at linebacker. Like in the rotation isn't really that big of a deal. And I think there's going to be, I would even alter this question to say that there'll be at least 2 true freshmen in the rotation at Texas A&M. And I would still be in on it.
Interesting. If that happens, then Marcus Freeman's philosophy has definitely shifted since 2 years ago at Ohio State.
They won't start, but they'll be in the rotation.
Yeah.
You won't be able to keep Bryce Young off the field.
Okay, speaking of Kingston Biliamu, Asa, he'll be the starting Mike linebacker by late October. You in or out on that?
I am so far out that I can't even see the question. Like that, everybody is just completely forgetting about Drake Bowen.
I know.
And thinks that he is just some bum off the street.
I know.
Like that is just going to get bypassed.
He's already getting, like the JD Bertrand treatment, and he hasn't even started a game yet.
Unbelievable. Like everybody was super excited this time last year for Drake Bowen, and now he's yesterday's trash.
I know.
Like
This is a big out
Wow.
for me.
Man.
Kingston's going to be in the rotation.
Correct.
But I don't think he's going to replace Drake Bowen by the middle or by late October.
No, unless there's an injury.
Yeah.
And I don't answer any of these questions based on if there's an injury because you can't do that, right?
We're going man for man,
Correct.
just assuming everyone's 100% or, everyone's healthy. So,
there's just like next year, I think they'll be playing next to each other. But I don't think that it's not going to be one or the other.
Next one, CJ Carr will be the backup by the end of the season. It seems like every show we're getting CJ Carr questions now as we get closer to training camp. In or out on that, Vince?
I understand it because we all witnessed the same thing, right? I mean, the kid's good. He processes things faster than anybody else on the roster. And I'm going to go with my heart on this, and I'm going to say that I'm in on it. And I still think he should be the backup at the beginning of the season, but it says by season's end. The problem is if he's not the backup at the beginning of the season, they're not going to change it, at least not on paper. They're never going to send us like, oh my gosh, it's the Navy game, and all of a sudden CJ Carr is second string on paper. Like, we'll never see it. The only chance we have of seeing a change in the depth chart at quarterback, like naturally, not barring injury, naturally, is maybe going into the playoff or the bowl game or something like that. Maybe you see a jockeying at that point because there's a little bit more time there. But the depth chart doesn't usually change a whole lot on paper from week 1 until the end of the season.
Right. I'm just going to say I am out because I think the only two ways that it happens are kind of what you're saying. Either an injury occurs or whatever bowl game type thing. I think that's the only way that he ends up in that spot. Now, does that mean that I don't, do I think he should be? Again, just based on the limited amount of live reps that we've seen, he's definitely shown himself already to be a guy who, at the very least, was pushing to be in that situation. But he was still the number 4 quarterback at the end of the spring. So
crazy.
Yep. So I'm out on that.
I mean, technically, Steve Angeli was the starter coming out of spring.
True.
Technically.
Are we in or are we out on having a succession plan instead of a national coaching search, inspired by Utah's recent announcement that their defensive coordinator will succeed Cal Whittingham when he retires? So do you like succession plan?
Like just in general, so not specifically at Notre Dame, I think is the question, right?
Yeah.
I think every situation is different. I try to look at it from an athletic director's perspective and point of view. If a guy has been around long enough and has earned the right to kind of name his successor in conjunction with me as the athletic director, then yeah, that's fine. But there also has to be an end date to that. Like, I wouldn't do it for more than like 2 years. Like, if you're coming to me and you're telling me you want to name your successor, then you better be out of here in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
With this day and age, we can't sit on a succession plan for like 5 or 6 years. Like, that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like that I'd be so far out on that. But again, the head coach has to earn that right. First of all, like if Marcus Freeman walked into Pete Bavacqua's office and like, I'd like to name my successor at Notre Dame, I'd be like, you can just turn around and walk right back out, dog. Right. Like, we're not doing that.
Well, yeah. One you're in year 3, like
right,
that's
what I'm saying.
A little bit of, a little card ahead of. I mean, it worked out at I think the best example of it working out is Purdue basketball, because remember,
that's true.
Matt Painter started off as the coach in waiting behind Gene Cady,
right,
for a year, maybe even 2. Because he was a head coach, I believe, previously. They brought him in. It's worked out really well there. I'd say so far it's worked out pretty, for the most part, okay with John Shire after Krzyzewski's retirement at Duke. So I just, you obviously have to have a really good feel for who it is. And I think as an athletic director, you have to trust what input you're getting from the current head coach. But at the
True.
same time, I don't know, with very few, maybe Krzyzewski would be, like one of the few who you would give, a full boat of autonomy to make that kind of
Right.
decision, just because you talk about a Hall of Famer and, whatever. Like, how much input do you want to give the guy who's leaving when you're
Right.
ultimately the athletic director who has to make that final call?
It would have to be in conjunction with, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
gonna look, after you ride off into the sunset, I've got to deal with this guy, as the athletic director. And if I don't get along with them, and if there's not a good relationship there, then that's not going to work. And at the end of the day, it's up to me, not you. Like, we can frame it any way you want. If we're all in agreement, like, I don't care. But once you leave, I'm the one that has to deal with this guy. So, or gal, I guess, as the case may be. But everybody has to be on the same page. This just can't be driven by the football coach themselves or the basketball coach or whatever coach it happens to be. Because I've definitely seen it backfire, at lower levels.
Sure. In or out on socks with sandals? This is the easiest out that we'll probably ever have. Is there a worse look than socks with sandals?
No.
No offense to anyone who does it. If you're doing it, you might want to reconsider that as a style statement, though.
I think the only place where I would even somewhat allow the socks with the sandals is like after a sporting event, you take your cleats off and you throw the slides on.
Yeah.
And you still have your socks on.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Like post-baseball game, because you got to get your spikes off and you don't want to put on just a pair of shoes, so you throw on the slides. Yeah, I can see that.
That's the only exception I have to the rule. Like, if you're wearing
like dad
flip-flops,
walking around on vacation with socks and sandals, sorry.
Hard pass. That's terrible. Absolutely awful. Don't do it.
Can't
way
go for
out
that.
on that one. Yes.
No can do. Right. Burgers, brats, and dogs on the 4th of July instead of barbecue ribs, chicken, and steak.
Wow.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either. Really.
No. Now, one takes a lot more time and energy and money to make than the other.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I can tell you right now, on my grill yesterday, there were burgers, brats, and hot dogs. So I guess I've got to be in on this because that's what I served at my house.
I was actually originally in on grilling steaks yesterday, but my wife talked me into going out, so we went out and
really,
yeah.
Interesting. I'm cool with a good steak, but I wasn't buying steaks for everybody.
Considering the weather yesterday, the weather did suck, so I'm kind of glad that we went out.
It's a good point. By the time we ate, we ate a little later on because normally we like to eat in the afternoon, but we didn't want people over at the house any longer than necessary, and so we pushed it so that it would be eating, a little bit of downtime, and then fireworks. You know what I mean? Because you got to wait for it to get dark. And because of stupid daylight savings time, you're not putting out fireworks until like 10 o'clock. So, which I have a huge problem with. That's a different conversation. So we ate later and the weather was okay.
Okay. Interesting one here on this next question from Irish English. As it currently stands, there is no actual trap game on the 2024 football schedule. We in or we out on that?
Oh, the whole trap game thing. I mean, as it currently stands, that's the question because we don't really know everything about all of these teams.
Yeah, and the broadness of trap game, by definition, a trap game is like a supposedly inferior opponent that comes between two pretty good opponents. Is that kind of how you would define it?
And that does not exist.
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm looking at the schedule, maybe the only trap game is Stanford because you got Louisville, Stanford, Georgia Tech.
Right.
And I'm not saying Georgia Tech is, but again, like we've talked about the quarterback, I think he's an underrated quarterback, with decent, a lot of interceptions last year, but still a pretty, I think I've said like Riley Leonard light, kind of thing.
Sure.
I I think that I would be in on this just because it's just kind of it's for the most part, you've got like a spike in the, it's fairly flatline schedule, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, people are going to find their trap games for content purposes, but I love the way this schedule shakes out, to be perfectly honest with you. We kind of ranked the schedule on one of our afternoon shows a while back, and there were like there was like four tier, or no, I'm sorry, there were three tiers essentially. And so when I went through it, and you had your quarters, you have 3 games in a quarter. Each quarter had somebody from the top, somebody from the middle, and somebody from the bottom. Like, that's how it broke down. There was a 1, a 2, and 3 in every single quarter. Like, I kind of love the way this schedule breaks down, to be perfectly honest with you.
So like, could we, because like Joe was saying, Georgia Tech could be the trap game. So do we define trap game the way I just said it, where it literally an opponent that you probably should beat that maybe could trip you up, that falls between 2 really good opponents? Or is a trap game just simply a team that could be better than you're thinking they could be? I don't know.
I mean, Georgia Tech is the one that most people are going to pick.
Yeah.
I get it. But Georgia Tech is going to be taking their lumps this season. And I don't know what's going to be left of Georgia Tech by the time
they could be a pulp by the time Notre Dame.
To be honest. Yeah. So, yeah, I just don't see any team that kind of falls under that category, because, you can't really say Louisville because of the revenge factor from the year before. You're not going to say any of the MAC teams. Mm-hmm. Purdue's not a good football team. So I don't know how. I mean, maybe that's a trap game because they're just getting on a bus and heading down there. Like, maybe they overlook them, I guess. Weirder things have happened at Ross-Ade Stadium. Just ask Ohio State. But I don't see this Purdue team even being that good. Stanford, no. I have a hard time seeing it. They're not going to look past any of these teams. So, again, famous last words. But
you've got plenty of them, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, a couple here. Marcus Freeman will end up being a more legendary coach than Lou Holtz and Ara Parseghian at Notre Dame.
No. He may win more championships than Lou if he wins 2. Obviously, he's got more. But the history and the lore that is attached to those 2, I don't think will be matched. So I'm out.
If he wins multiple championships, I could see it. Is he going to win? Like, the odds say he's not going to win multiples. That best case, he's going to win 1, right? You could make the case that if he wins 1, that because it's been so long since the championships and all that kind of stuff, that vaults him. But I think I've got to be out on this. I think I've got to be out as well, just because of how, like you said, it's like Lou Holtz, Ara Parseghian.
Yeah, those guys are legends, man.
Right? Yeah, it's like
that's man. Yeah.
Sloppy Joe saying if Freeman wins 1, it's a bigger accomplishment because of the expanded playoff.
I mean, okay, that's fine, but the legendary status is what we're talking about, and we're talking about within the Notre Dame culture, right? Those guys are already legends. I think you'd at least have to get some years removed from the championship and then maybe ask this question again. It's not going to be instantaneous.
Gray-haired Marcus Freeman 40 years from now.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to get away from it a little bit before you do that. Unless he becomes like a Nick Saban and wins like 6. That's that's a different conversation. But he's going to have to win multiple to have that conversation.
Next question from Hesburgh Mafia. Jaden Greathouse will be Notre Dame's first 1,000-yard receiver since Chase Claypool in 2025, not in 24. Ooh. So in other words, no 1,000-yard receiver this year, but Claypool gets it next year.
You know what? I'm actually in on this. I think that this is a very carefully worded question, and I like it. I like it a lot. I think they're going to be very spread around and all of that, but you you bring back Jaden Greathouse in his third year, and you've got a new starter at quarterback. You want to talk about security blanket. Jaden Greathouse will be that guy. And I like this one. I'm in.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're going to have one this year. I know Jesse,
Yeah.
when we were doing the receiver predictions last week, thought that they're going to have 2,000-yard receivers. It's like, all right, here we go. I don't think they're going to this year because I just think it's going to be too evenly distributed. But Greathouse develops another year. They're not going to have to, maybe they go to the portal to get a receiver next year, but they're not going to go get multiple receivers like this year. And I think Greathouse is definitely the guy next year. So I'm in on this as well. I like this. Greathouse hits it next year. Nobody gets it this year.
Because you're going to lose Bo Collins, I believe. You're going to lose Chris Mitchell.
Yep.
So those are big ones, right?
Yep.
Jaden Thomas, where's he at with his eligibility? He is okay. He's going to be junior eligibility, so he'll have another year. So bringing him back will mean something. But yeah, you're losing Mitchell and you're losing Collins. I think that opens up a lot of receptions that I think Jaden Greathouse might grab.
D Troll Hunter, we in or we out on DK? I don't see DK here today, so we got to be out on him, right?
I know Jesse would be out on him. That's for sure. I mean, DK comes hard sometimes, but I will also say he comes hard accurately at times as well. So I'm okay with him. I'm in.
Oh, you're in. Okay.
I'm in.
USMA is out. Salty's getting a little bit creepy here in the chat. I don't know if he's drinking cocktails down there in the South or what,
boy.
But I gave some Jaden Greathouse love, I guess. So.
I guess that would be it.
Pauly 1029, we in or we out on Jaden Harrison having a kick return, punt return, and receiving touchdown this season?
I'm out. He's not going to be returning punts, so that'll be really difficult.
It's the correct answer. Yeah.
I'm in on 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
I think he will have a kick return touchdown, and I think he'll have a receiving touchdown as well.
I do too.
But he's not a punt returner. He's a kick returner, and there is a difference.
Yep. We didn't see him return one punt during the spring.
Right. He's a straight line, one cut and go kind of a guy, and that's what you want as a kick returner. He's just not built to be a punt returner, and there's plenty of other guys on this roster that will be great at returning punts.
Salty's photo scrolling up on the screen now. He says the Irish will receive commitments from Messrs. Blair, of course, happened today, Hines, Robinson, Meadows, and Owusu Boateng. We in or we out on that?
I would love
Hines, Dylan Robinson, Derek Meadows. Are they going to get all 3 of those guys?
I'm out.
I think maybe 2 of the 3. Definitely one of the 3. Owusu Boateng, I will say yes, but I've got to be out on this question. I don't think they get all of those guys.
Yeah, I've heard that of all of these, I think Meadows is the least likely, but I don't know all the recruiting ins and outs, but that seems to be a recurring theme when people ask about him. So I will say I'm out.
Yeah. DJ reaffirming not okay to put ketchup on anything. Salty, by the way, said from the prior post, in on DK, out on socks with sandals. I did see Tommy basically saying when he's doing, like transitioning in and out of the truck, maybe he doesn't put the boots back on. And if you're working, kind of like the baseball thing, if you're working, and you're, it's like you're kind of in between, and it's easier just to throw on a pair of sandals. I can live with that.
They got to be slides though. They got to be like if you're trying to get the little toe thing,
like the official strap-on sandal. Yeah.
If you're trying to put the toe thing in, like with the sock, it just gets weird. Even though I've done it to run the trash out or something like that's. I feel like that's different. If you're just looking for something to put on your feet to get the trash out or run to the car in the garage, that
Yeah.
kind of a deal. I don't care what you wear on your feet. All right. But if you're leaving the house for any period of time, you cannot wear the socks with the sandals.
Concur. Okay, DJ, with a slate of questions here. In or out on CJ Carr seeing meaningful playing time, not mop-up time this season?
I'm out, because if I'm in, that means Riley Leonard got hurt and the season is in the toilet. So I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out on that as well. He's not going to see any high leverage type snaps this season. Again, assuming health.
Right.
Jadarian Price has more carries than Jeremiah Love, but Love has more receptions. In or out on that?
Yeah, I'll be in on that. I think that's a definite possibility for sure.
I think Price is going to end up being more the workhorse type back, but Love, because of the fact that he will get some receptions, he won't have as many carries as Price. So I'll be in on that as well. In or out on Oklahoma State winning the Big 12?
I'm out. I think the Big 12 is wide open, so I'm taking the field over one team. So that's the way I'm looking at this. I don't know that I would be in on anybody in particular. If you put any team in this particular slot and said wins the Big 12, I would be out. I would rather take the field over one team.
I'm still more in on Utah. Of course,
yeah,
they'll play in the regular season. Then they would potentially play. I think it's going. I would say Utah and Oklahoma State playing in the Big 12 championship. Sloppy Joe says out because it's going to be Kansas State winning the Big 12. I mean, Sloppy Joe, I know he's from Wichita, but everybody knows Kansas is going to be the best team in the state of Kansas this season. So come on.
Mic drop.
That's right. I'm out on Oklahoma. Like, the key to this is going to be, I think Utah wins in the regular season, but does Oklahoma State return the favor in the Big 12 championship game, for example?
Sure.
But I'm going to be out on that. I'll still roll with Utah, but I think you're right. I think it's going to be a pretty competitive conference. And then DJ also says the national champion will come from seeds 1 through 5, but will beat a 6 through 12 in the final.
I love this question, actually.
Great.
This one's really tough. I feel like there's kind of the top 4-ish teams. Then there's kind of but I do think they're going to kind of beat on each other. So, you know what? I'm in on this. I am in on this because I think that one of the teams that we consider a top team will fall to the 6 to 12 category because they didn't win their conference championship. So maybe they won against that foe in the regular season, but then lost in the conference championship game, and therefore they can't be 1 through 4. And since Notre Dame's already going to have the 5 slot locked up, that means they fall to 6 through 12, and then they could work their way into the championship. I could see that being the case. I'm going to be in on this.
I think I'm in on it as well. And that's probably the best explanation. Like, I think that one of these 6 through 12 teams is going to get hot and they're going to get on a roll.
Yeah.
They're going to get into that championship game.
I do too.
Ultimately.
And they could win it, but the odds aren't obviously as good,
Yeah.
I love this question, though.
Like USMA says, OSU, Oregon scenario. So one of them wins the Big Ten. The other will maybe be in that 6-7 seed range, depending on what the regular season record looks like. And then one of them gets hot. Yeah. I think it's easy to see happening.
Absolutely.
From Joe, one quarterback will enter the transfer portal in December, and it won't be who you expect. In or out on that?
I'm out. I'm so out on this because I know who I would expect. And if it's not who I expect, that means that CJ Carr jumped into the portal, and that would be a massive problem for Notre Dame. So,
yeah. I mean, honestly, he's the only one of the 3 who are options who I wouldn't expect.
Right. Unless the Rezak kid decides as a walk-on to jump into the portal.
To go to the portal and go play someplace else.
And I wouldn't expect that And so I
True.
guess if that happened, this would be an in situation, but I don't think he's going to leave either since his twin brother is on the team.
Yeah.
But I am out on this. I don't see that happening.
I mean, he's an interesting walk-on, by the way. Like when you
Very.
think about it, like
very.
the level that he played at in the state of Nebraska and decided to come here, without a scholarship. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously he had opportunities to go elsewhere. He was the player of the year. I mean,
exactly.
That was an interesting decision, but obviously he can afford it and wants that Notre Dame degree. So good for him.
13 Reasons Why says this year's men's hot dog eating champion has an asterisk next to it. We in or we out? Nathan's guy ate what, 57? Chestnut ate 58 in some other contest I think I saw.
Was it? He's only beat him by a couple?
Yeah.
Ooh, now that's even more interesting, frankly. Get it, Frankfurter hot dog. Anyway, just came up with that. I'm out because he didn't participate. So you don't win if you can't participate. I'm out.
Right. He followed the rules. He wasn't juicing, he wasn't hopped up on anything. He entered the contest just like everybody else. If Chestnut wanted to be there, he could have been there.
Yeah.
So
he chose money over fame.
Yep.
Yep. The age-old question.
Eating those vegan hot dogs. I've never had a vegan hot dog. Have you?
I have not had a vegan anything, and I don't plan on starting anytime soon.
Straight up meat, baby.
That's right.
It's what's for dinner.
Don't trust anything else.
In or out on the Notre Dame men's basketball team making the NCAA tournament? I assume he means NCAA because he just said tourney.
Oh, yeah. That's the only tourney that's out there that matters.
Yeah.
This is a really, really good question because, we've talked about this a bunch, and I think we all believe that Notre Dame should be in the conversation. So that means they're going to be a bubble team. So that means they've got like a 50-50 shot of actually getting in the tournament if they're a bubble team. I think they're going to make some noise this year. They've filled a couple of holes. I like, what the freshmen did last year. They're going to have a year under their belt with a lot of playing time as well. They've had a year with the head coach. I'm going to buy this. I'm in on this because I really want it to be true. I want to be able to go to a men's game and get excited and cheer for this team and, follow them into the tournament. So I'm going to be in on this, but man, it's about as 50-50 as it gets.
I did see, I think earlier this week, that they've got the most returning scoring of any team in the ACC this season, but they also don't have, like, I don't know what everyone's, incoming freshmen look like across the entire ACC, but they don't have the kind of guy, they don't have like top 10 type guys coming in this freshman class, like some of the schools in the ACC are going to have in terms of, like potential one and done kind of guys or whatever else. I'm going to be out. I think they're going to be better. I think they'll be an NIT team because remember, they weren't even an NIT team this year. I think they'll be NIT, strong NIT, maybe close to the bubble, but just on the outside looking in. Improved, but not quite there. I can't go quite as optimistic as Vince, so I've got to be out on it.
Such a negative Nelly.
Camo 21-11. Kingston Viliamuesa will score 2 touchdowns this season, an interception and a fumble return. In or out?
Out. Like out. It is so hard to score a defensive touchdown, and you're telling me that a guy who's not even a starter, he's a rotation player, is going to have an opportunity to get an interception and a fumble return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
The chances of that happening are astronomical, like astronomical. Now, I think he's going to play special teams, and so maybe there's a chance for a fumble return, in that regard. But man, if he does this, his stock is just absolutely going to skyrocket, like beyond measurable proportions. And so I just don't see it happen. I got to be out.
Yeah, I mean, got to be out as well. It's just that's so rare that someone has one of the two, let alone both of the two, and especially a freshman who's going to be a part-time player. So I have to be out on it.
Woo!
By the way,
Man,
like I've seen some of the comments about my WKRP shirt. Why Les Nessman? Why is everyone going to Les Nessman? I can't be Johnny Fever, like, come on.
I got to watch some WKRP in Cincinnati to understand those references.
I think you do. We talk about a show that was before your time.
Oh, yeah. Big time. I only know what I know about it because of you. So, like the turkey drop and all this other stuff.
That's true.
I only know that because of you.
You're missing out. I think it might be streaming.
Really?
Like on Prime, or it might be on Prime.
Okay.
Actually, right now. Florida State is not in the ACC for the 2025 season because they're in the Big Ten. I'm basically combining these two. In or out on that?
I know they're going to try to get out, and I think that there's a deadline for them announcing that they're leaving after the 24 season, and I think it's sometime in July. So I think there's going to be an announcement coming, but then they can rescind it or whatever. I'm going to be out. I don't see that being the case. I mean, the Big Ten already has a ridiculous amount of teams in it, and I don't know that they're fishing for more. So I'm just out on the whole scenario. I'm out.
I'm out as well. But Father David's, interesting one, holding out that they go to the Big 12. That would be very interesting. I don't see it. I just don't see it. I'm going to be out on this.
The whole controversy that Florida State is stirring in their court case and everything else, and they want out of the ACC. I'm just not sure that there's a league out there that wants them, to be perfectly honest with you. There may be one that eventually takes them, but I don't think they're clamoring for it. I don't think their phone is ringing off the hook from the SEC or the Big Ten, but we really want you in our conference. I just don't see that being the case right now. I think they're going to be a team without a home.
DJ is saying there will be a settlement, and they get out. Salty is saying Florida State has nowhere to go. I lean more towards Florida State has nowhere to go. I don't know that all these conferences are that anxious for, to grab up either Florida State or Clemson.
Yeah.
Right now.
Joe thinks they're going to end up in the Big 12 because no one else wants them. And then they're going to be like, wow, why did we do this?
Right.
You're talking about buyer's remorse. I think that would definitely be the case.
Yeah.
But if they do get out, it will cause a chain of dominoes where you're going to see a bunch of teams opting out of the ACC. And that obviously won't be good.
Yeah. Diffusius says Al Golden is a top candidate for the Penn State job during/after the season. We in or we out on that?
Ooh. I'm out because Penn State is fine with them being a 10-win football team. They're not getting rid of James Franklin.
Yeah. Penn State's got a decent enough schedule this year that you can pencil them in for at least 9 wins. This is year 11 for James Franklin at Penn State. There would have to be some kind of disaster that happens for James Franklin to be forced out of Penn State. So I've got to be out on this one as well.
I mean, don't you think if they're 10-2, they're probably they're probably the third Big Ten team to get in.
Yeah.
If they're 10-2, and you're not going to get fired if you're in the playoff. So even if they're 9-3, they're going to be right there, bubble team to get in the playoff. That whole conversation. I just don't see him getting ousted, and he's not going to leave on his own. The recruiting has been very good. We all know that he's not a great in-game coach and all those things, but they're a perennial 9-10 win team, and I think Penn State's okay with that, to be honest with you.
I completely think so as well, and I thought that we had something that was kind of related to that a little bit, but I'm not seeing it in there. So maybe I read the question wrong earlier, but yeah, if they're 10-2, they're going to be playoff contending team. They're going to have a really good shot at getting in the playoff.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
I'm out. Jace Whitney says Jeremiah Love shakes a couple A&M defenders to score a 20-plus yard touchdown for the first touchdown of the season. In or out on that?
For the first touchdown of the season? Oh, I hate first to score bets and things that because it never works out the way I think it's going to work out. So I'm out. I'm out. I will never be able to predict who scores the first touchdown.
Yeah, I would not go out and make any prop bets on it, but I like the thought on this, so I'll just say I'm in. Just for the fun of it. Like I said, I'm not going to drop any wagers on this, but okay, I'll buy it. I like the thought, so I'm in.
Okay, I love the thought. Frankly, I do love the thought.
Yeah. The other one, Christian Gray leads the team in interceptions. I think we're both pretty close to in on this if we're not both in.
Oh, I'm not close to in. I'm in. I'm all the way in on this. I think he's going to get tested an awful lot because I do think, a couple things have to happen, right? Number one, I think he wins the starter job opposite Ben Morrison, okay? Number two, I think he gets tested an awful lot because he's a first-time starter and his name isn't Benjamin Morrison. And so he's going to have lots of opportunities. And we've already seen his athletic ability to go up and get balls. And so I think I do think he leads the team in interceptions this year for sure. And if it's not him, it'll be Xavier Watts again.
That's what I was going to say. It's going to be one of those two.
Yeah.
Going back to the Al Golden question, Father David says he's out because if and when he leaves Notre Dame, it's going to be for the NFL. So now I guess we're assuming that means as an NFL defensive coordinator, right? Like, I don't think he becomes an NFL head coach.
Good call.
Out of being a coordinator at Notre Dame. So
I would love to sit down with Al Golden and figure out what his aspirations are as a coach. Does he want to be a head coach again? Does he want to go back to the NFL? Like, what is it that you want to do? Sloppy Joe thinks he's going to retire at Notre Dame. I think that option is right up there in the percentages that the other options are as well. I just don't know that he's looking for the next job right now. But again, I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously had a lot of college experience previously, and he didn't become a coordinator in his time in the NFL, but I think that his time at Notre Dame has definitely put him in a great position to get that within a year or two, if that's what he wants to do, because it has opened a lot of people's eyes. Like when you hear, like just as an example, and I know that some people will love this one, but like when you hear Mike Zimmer raving about Maris Leofau, why is he raving about Maris Leofau? Because of the system that he played in here at Notre Dame, because of all that he knows. And so, like, if you spin that, that's a very positive reflection on Al Golden. But you're right. Like, does he want to just be a defensive coordinator on a really good college, at a really good college football program and have the opportunity to do the things that he's doing? Like he's talked about before about how much, more he's able to do here at Notre Dame because of the smarts that these guys have that he gets to work with.
And there, you know what? There's something to be said also for being the go-to defensive coordinator in college for NFL GMs to look at. You know what I mean? Like, they're coming to him and asking if they think that these guys are ready for the NFL and things like that. I think there's something to be said for that role. You know what I mean? And if he goes to the NFL, he's just going to be another coordinator,
Well, but maybe he wants to be an NFL head coach.
Maybe he does. Someday. Yeah. That's definitely possible.
Like, if that's his goal, because he is still, he's like mid-50s. So he's not old by any means, but he's got a ton of experience. So if he wants to be an NFL head coach, then I could see that track.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Sure.
But
I
don't think you're ever going to get him to, admit on the record that he wants to be an NFL head coach.
He is a very well-compensated defensive coordinator at the college level in Northern Indiana. I'm sure he's living a good life and he's enjoying himself at this point. And so I could see why he wouldn't want to leave, but we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. Ballpeen Shalele says, just rewatched last year's game against USC and realized that though the defense played lights out, offense was sort of just good enough. With that in mind, this year, the Notre Dame offense will have multiple games where it will actually outperform the defense. We in or we out on that?
Multiple games means 2, right?
At least 2.
At least 2. Where the offense will outperform the defense. I think that's a matter of perception to a degree. Are there going to be games where the offense has to pick up the defense? I'm sure that there is. As I look at the schedule, are there any offenses that jump off the page that I'm necessarily worried that the Notre Dame defense can't handle? The answer is no, right? And so, I think game 1 could be an example of that. I think if Notre Dame goes in there and they score 4 touchdowns, for example, right? And I think that all the talk is going to be about the Notre Dame offense because of Mike Elko and all of those different things. And even though A&M won't have scored as many points and the defense will probably play well, I think the offense will get a lot of the publicity coming out of that game. So if that's the definition of the offense outplaying the defense, then sure. I just think maybe people are taking for granted how freaking good this defense is.
I think it's going to be tough for this specifically to happen because of the kind of schedule that they have. Because like you said, what offenses that you look at going into the season really scare you? There are none that you should be completely frightened of, but at the same time, Florida State, especially by November, should have the best chance of anybody, I think, to score some points. USC.
Maybe USC. I mean,
yeah.
Look, right? Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Those are the 2. So,
yep.
It's always that you want to play a complimentary game, right? And
Sure.
like especially if BK was still the head coach, that he would downshift. But I don't think Marcus Freeman has shown necessarily the desire to downshift. He kind of keeps going for the kill when he has the opportunity.
And I think Denbrock, look, they've worked together in the past, obviously, and I think Denbrock's going to have some say offensively. If Marcus Freeman says something to him in the headset, and I think Denbrock will be like, look, we need to put a few more points on the board or something along those lines. And I think Marcus Freeman would be amenable to that. You know what I mean? I think that there will be some more give and take as opposed to kind of in the past where Freeman has put his thumb on the offense a little bit. I just don't see that being the case with Mike Denbrock. I think there's a different, and it's nothing against Parker or Reese or anything else. I just think there's a different level of respect based on their prior relationship now than there was with the last 2 OCs under Marcus Freeman. So I guess I never said whether I was in or out. I'm actually out on this. When I go back and watch the game, I don't think I'm going to be like, whew, thank God for the offense. They really bailed the defense out.
Right.
I just don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my answer, I guess, as well. And I didn't completely answer it. But I'm out because I think there aren't going to be those kind of opportunities, I think, for the most part. Or I just don't see the defense getting torched. And I think because I think the defense is just going to be that good.
Yeah.
Curtis says, if Notre Dame plays Ohio State this year, we finally get the W, hopefully for the national championship game. That would be epic. You in or you out on that? So if Notre Dame and Ohio State play, it's definitely going to be in the playoffs somewhere.
Sure.
In or out on Notre Dame winning that game?
I think, look, Ohio State has a heck of a roster, no doubt about it. But I think third time's a charm for Notre Dame versus Ohio State. They outplayed Ohio State last year, but they didn't get it done at the end. So,
right.
You got to tip your caps to Ohio State. They got it done when it counted. No doubt about it. But I am in on this because I think Notre Dame has seen what Ohio State can throw at them. Literally and figuratively. I think they've seen it, and I don't think it's going to be a David versus Goliath or anything like that. I think it's going to be 2 equally matched teams, and I think Notre Dame comes out on top.
Yeah, I would be in on it as well because they have played the last 2 years. And year 1 to year 2, you shifted venues. You were at Ohio State, obviously. You're You're at Notre Dame, both of them very close,
Yeah.
competitive games. Marcus Freeman obviously has a pretty good plan about how to play that. And I think if they get a third opportunity, they've upgraded at quarterback, they've upgraded it at receiver, they've upgraded the offensive coordinator. Pretty much, for the most part, everything else is a wash from a Notre Dame perspective. I know Ohio State thinks that they've upgraded vastly at the quarterback position with what they have with Howard coming in. Maybe they're a little bit better, but I would give it to Notre Dame. I would go in on this.
Yeah.
For sure. In a third time is the charm situation.
Absolutely.
A 10-3 team makes the playoff this year. In or out on that? Like, I was looking, if a 10-3 team comes, or if there's a 10-3 team, it's going to come from the SEC. Like, here's Alabama's schedule, for example. At Wisconsin, Georgia. These are like the big games. At Wisconsin, Georgia, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma, Auburn. Could you see Alabama losing 3 of those teams and
No.
making the playoff?
I don't. Here's what I see. The only way a 10-3 team makes the playoff is if it's a 10-2 team and they're in the championship for their league and they lose
Conference
a close
championship game. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's the only way I see a 10-3 team making it in.
Yeah. Because I went through the Big Ten schedule, and none of those schedules stack up to where if you lose 3 of those games, you're going to be in. Like,
sure.
LSU, they play USC, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma. Georgia plays Clemson, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, Tennessee. So
let me ask you this: if USC loses to LSU in the opener, Notre Dame in the closer, the final game, right? But they're undefeated in the conference. So they're playing in the championship for the Big Ten championship, and they lose a heartbreaker to Ohio State. Are they in?
In that situation, yeah, because we're going to assume that Notre Dame and LSU are both going to be playoff teams, probably, right?
I mean, I don't want to assume LSU's a playoff team because that hurts my heart a little bit, but I see what you're saying. I mean, they could be, 8-4, and
let's put it this way: if LSU is a playoff team, and in that situation Notre Dame is a playoff team, and then they lose a close game to a third playoff team, I could see them getting in as like 10, 11, 12 seed. Yeah,
right.
But I think that's going to be like the chances of that whole thing playing out. So I'm going to say out. I'm going to say out on that.
Tommy actually does make a good point. The only other way a 10-3 team could make the playoff is if they have 3 losses and somehow are in their championship game and win.
Yeah, that's true. Like there's a second place team in their conference.
Right. So
with
again,
3 losses and they get in and win. Yeah.
Let's go back to USC. And they lose to LSU, they lose to Notre Dame, and they lose 1 conference game, but they're still good enough to be in the Big Ten championship, and they win it. Now they're 10-3, and they're one of the top 4 seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like that.
Yep.
So, I mean, that is a possibility. I mean, it's not likely, but it is a possibility.
I want to see how this season plays out, like with just how tough, what the wins and losses look like in these expanded conferences.
Sure.
The SEC especially.
And how much weight the committee is going to give to Big Ten, SEC teams, and all of those different things. Is the Big 12 only going to get 1 team in? Is the ACC only going to get 1 team in? I think, so there are so many question marks as to how this is going to look. I think it's going to be a fascinating thing to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah. But, like DJ is saying, if they're 10-3, it's possible they had a bad loss like Marshall not making it then. Because, like, your scenario that you're talking about where, like, whether you're USC, like, let's say you're LSU, for example. Let's just use them. They lose to USC in the first game of the season, but then they rebound and they're just, doing well in SEC play. So let's say they lose 2 games in SEC play and they're the number 2 team. in the SEC. So like all of their losses don't necessarily have to come in conference play, is what I'm saying.
Right,
So,
but then they would have 3 losses, and then they would have to win the SEC
right,
championship.
and then they get in and they win the
because they
SEC
won.
championship,
Yeah.
which is a completely realistic
that's
scenario.
absolutely that. And that's why I wonder about non-conference games moving forward. Are teams still going to schedule tough non-conference games because
Right.
they can still win their conference championship and make it into the playoff, no problem. And it doesn't even matter what they do in non-conference. You know, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Mark is saying last year teams ranked 11 through 15 were all 10-3. So
how is that possible? They were all in their conference championship and lost? Because that's the only way to play 13 games.
Oh, that's a good point. So they would have had to be 10-3 after their bowl games.
After their bowl game.
Yeah. They ended up 10-3.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to look at the standings and figure out.
Yeah.
Because the only standings we care about are the ones that occurred, like the final
pre-bowl
CFP
game
standings. Yeah, and there's no way they were all 10-3.
Right. No, that's a great point. They couldn't have been because of the fact that you only played 12 regular season games. So you'd have to go back to what the record was, not at the end of the season, but before the bowl games. So they couldn't have been 10-3. But We Are Notre Dame also says the SEC will get 4 teams into the playoffs. In or out on that?
I'm out. I think they'll get 3. I think they'll push for 4. And I think whoever the 4th place team will whine like the little babies that they'll end up being. But I think they'll get 3. So I'm out.
Well, this is why they want the playoff to expand to 14 before we've even had 12, because they want more assurances that they're going to get more teams.
Of course.
Basically. I'm going to be out as well. I think the SEC and the Big Ten will each get 3. And then, so that's 6 teams right there. I think Notre Dame gets in. That's 7. And that leaves you 5 spots for the other conferences, the Big 12 and the ACC, which will each get at least 1. So that leaves you down to 3 more spots right there. I think there's a very good chance. Oh, and then you've got the group of 5. So that leaves you down to 2 spots remaining. And then I think the ACC will have a strong chance to get an extra team in. And I wouldn't rule out whoever the runner-up in the Big 12 is just yet.
So I did look up the final college football playoff standings, by the way, and 11 through 15, you had Ole Miss at 10-2, you had Oklahoma at 10-2, you had LSU at 9-3, you had Arizona at 9-3, and you had Louisville at 10-3. That was 11 through 15, and then Notre Dame was 16 at 9-3.
Okay.
So
there are a lot of 2-loss teams basically sitting there.
The 2-loss teams accounted for numbers 8 through 12, actually. Okay. So one of those 2-loss teams would not have made it in to the 12-team playoff because one of those would have obviously gone to Liberty, which would have vaulted above everybody from 23 to 12. So,
but again, everyone's record's going to look a little bit different.
Oh, because we got new conferences and
fat conferences.
And because you look at like the SEC. For example, like last year, the SEC would have gotten in, let's see, Alabama is 1, Georgia 2, Missouri 3, Ole Miss 4. They would have gotten 4 in last year. And Texas, obviously, is in the SEC this year. That would have made 5, which is crazy. Yeah. So, but they're going to beat each other up, obviously, as well. So that's not going to be the case. But, it'll be interesting.
Fini. That is it.
Okay.
We've come to a conclusion. Yeah.
That was fun. I purposely don't look at the questions ahead of time because I like to go with my gut feeling.
Well, I like to look because of like the question that we had from Played Like a Champion.
It's true.
Where, sometimes you do need a little bit of research to back you up. Tommy, I just saw the whole thing. Maybe... Of course, Tommy's going to call us out here.
Oh, boy.
Let me go back in. I went to the end. I didn't see one.
The one under Blair, he says.
Was his... Did I scroll past it?
Oh.
Hang Hang on. I'm getting back in here.
Yeah, he's got one in there. It's the second to last one.
Okay.
He hid it behind a hashtag.
Of course. Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. I see. Because I saw we're blaring happiness coming into tonight's show based on the 3 p.m. show. So I didn't know that there was an actual question down below. I didn't see that. So here we go. One more time for Tommy Two-Tone here. The Bo Show is going to go to 7 catches for 130 yards with 2 touchdowns.
Man,
versus Texas A&M.
That is quite the debut, the debut for Bo Collins. I am going to be out on that because that means he's basically going to be like one of 2 receivers on the entire day. And I don't think that's going to be the case either. I don't think anybody gets that kind of a stat line in game 1. I'm out.
No, I don't think so either. I got to be out on that. I would like to see Bo Collins actually in practice a little bit first in training camp before I go overboard with him.
This is true. Tommy is all in
predicting his numbers
on the Bo Show without seeing a second of him in a Notre Dame uniform.
Tommy is all Bo Show. Salty, of course, is all the great one, Jaden Greathouse. All right. So that is it. We're going to wrap it up with that. We're going to talk about some stuff on Monday, as always. DJ's putting the odds at plus 1,200. I wouldn't doubt that. You probably get really good odds on that. All right. Well, have a great rest of your 4th of July weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday. Joe wants to know if you're on the mailbag tomorrow. I believe you are, right?
High noon, 12 o'clock high.
Yep.
We will be doing the mailbag tomorrow. So a fun little extra Saturday show. So make sure you tune in. That's for sure.
All right. Let's do it. We will talk to you then. Like I said, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday on IB Nation Sports Talk.